2011. Everything's a 2011. Ford Fiesta. Growling noise while driving. Front wheel bearings. What you want to do is break your wheel lugs loose, jack it up and support it, and remove your wheels. Okay? And here's my helper today, my apprentice. Okay, you got the wheels off. What you need to do is saturate everything in the front with some penetrant. Your knuckle bolts, your tie rod ends, nuts, and your ball joints down below. I forgot to do that one. So I'm doing both sides. Make sure you put some lube on your spindle nut. Okay? And also your brake line. So we gotta take the tie rod end off, the brake line end off, spindle bolts right here for the strut, and the lower ball joint. And then we can get that knuckle out so we can press that knuckle out, that bearing out of that knuckle. All right. All right. First thing you want to do is remove your tie rod end nut. It's an 18 millimeter. Okay. If the nut and the tie rod end stud spins, then you have to tighten it up, and you get a little propane torch and heat up the nut, and then you can remove it. The reason why you want to tighten it up because you're seating it back into the taper. Okay. So you get the nut off, and then you have to hit the knuckle right here with a decent hammer, like a 3-pound sledgehammer. That's what I use. Like that one. It's not actually 3 pounds. I think it's a little short of 3 pounds, but I can just call it 3 pounds. But you want to hit it. You want to hit it right here. Okay. Usually takes 2 hands. Try not to hit the tie rod end threads. You'll mess them up. Okay, so you hit it really hard, and it should give it enough vibration and it'll break the taper. Okay. Okay, I raise it up so I can get to the ball joint. Now, the reason why I do the tie rod end first, so I can move this knuckle any direction I want to get access to everything. So now I'm gonna do the ball joint. It's a bolt going through a notch. And so you got a nut, which is a 15, and the bolt going through there is a 14 millimeter head. Okay, so you want to remove that bolt. Oh, I stand corrected. That bolt had so much rust on it that it's actually a 13. So what you want to do is you put your socket on that nut and you hit it with your impact and let that bolt spin in there so it loosens up inside there. You know, if it spins, let it spin. And then put your wrench on to hold the bolt. If the bolt does not spin, then you know that bolt is frozen in there and you need to soak it with some more penetrant. And then once you soak it for a while, then you can hit it with a impact with a socket on the bolt to get the bolt loose. But don't hit it too hard because you might break the head off. So once you got, if it doesn't come loose, then you want to tap the end of the bolt with your hammer to break it loose a little bit. The vibration will knock away the rust. Okay. This is my bolt. It's spun in there, and then I put the wrench on and I held it and I took the nut off. Okay, it looks like that. Next you want to do is spray some penetrant to the ball joint hole and in that slot on the knuckle. Okay, and then we're gonna turn it all the way like that so we can get a chisel in there to open that knuckle up. You know, that bolt squished together onto the ball joint, okay? Not a crazy, really fat chisel, okay? About actual size, but you need to use that one. Put it in the slot like that and hit it in. It opens it up a little bit and loosens up the ball joint, okay? Get your bar in there and pry it out, okay? Nice hole there in the bottom. If it don't come out, you can tap onto the control arm right here with a hammer. As you're prying down on it, that helps it come out, okay? Next you want to do is remove your brake caliper hose bolt. You don't have to, but I am trying to get this caliper totally out of the way. Now it's a 10mm head bolt. Okay. If it doesn't want to move, then just leave it in there because it might twist off the little bracket off your strut. So I'll remove that. Next, I'm going to remove my whole caliper assembly. And those are, well, we'll take the caliper off. That way we'll know if the slides are frozen or not. Okay? So we're going to take these off. Those caliper bolts are 12mm head. I pulled them out. Okay. So now your caliper is just in there. What I'm going to do is, there's a big rust ridge on there. I don't want to damage anything. So I'm just going to take these caliper bracket bolts out. And those are, I think, 15s. Okay, I got the caliper bracket bolts off. Those are 15s. They went right here and up there, okay? So now the whole thing's loose. So now you can take the whole thing off. Slides right off. And now you can take the pads and the bracket off nicely without having to pry them off and damage something, okay? So what we're gonna do, we wanna know, make sure that these aren't frozen, which they are not, but I'm gonna take them apart. I'm gonna put some Seal Glide in there anyway. Everything's looking pretty good. So get that in order for the right side, okay? Okay, you got the calipers and the brackets off. Next thing you need to do is remove your rotors. If you got aftermarket rims, make sure you don't lose the spacer ring for the aftermarket rim. Keeps the rim centered. So then you need to do is remove the rotor. If the rotor is not loose, then you'll have to put some tension around it, smack it with a hammer here and here. If you're not gonna keep the rotor, then you can smack it around on the surface, okay? The vibration loosens it up so you can break the rust loose, okay? But these are loose, so we're good, all right? Now you'll notice the rust inside there. Now that we took it off and everything's different now, you're gonna have to clean all that rust off of there and off of here. If you're not getting new rotors, you gotta clean that rust off inside there. Otherwise it'll cause the rotor to wobble and create a brake pulsation like you got warped rotors, okay? Okay, next, remove the axle nut. Axle nut is a 32mm. Okay, if you don't have an impact and you already got it apart and you need to get this off, what you need to do is put a bar in between these studs and lay it across the ground. I have to be going that way with it. So it pushes against the ground that way so you remove it, okay? All right, so now you gotta remove this nut. Okay, you got the nut removed. Next, you wanna find out how the rest of your day is gonna go. Tap on a little bit. It's moving. That means it's not frozen, okay? So that's good. That means you can take there. You'll get this shaft out of the hub. The next you want to remove is the strut bolts. Okay? All right, before you remove these, I got too far ahead of myself. You want to take the ABS sensor off. ABS sensor has just some rubber mounts that push into these little things. They just push in there. Just wiggle and pull them, they'll come right off. There's two of these. And then you got these type of clips onto the inside fender well. Pull them off. You need to remove this clip here from the fender skirt, as well as one plastic ones that always break. You pull that out, and you can get access to the connector. Pull the connector out of the inner fender well. Undo it. It's got that tab you push in on so you can get them out, loosen them up. Okay, see it? Push on that tab right there. Push on it, pull it apart. Make sure there's no dirt buildup in there. Won't allow you to pull apart. So now you got this all disconnected. Now you can remove your bolts. I think those are 18. Like I said, hit them with the impact or whatever. So if they spin the bolt, then you know they're not frozen in there. Okay, the bolt head's a 15 and the nut's an 18. And it's okay for these to spin inside there because it doesn't have the notches on the head of the bolt to help hold them. But usually if they got the hex on them for a wrench, they're not that style that you don't need to hold. You pound them in because they got the little notches on them that pushes into the knuckle. So then you can remove the bolts, get both bolts out. Okay, most likely it's going to stay in there because of the rust. So then you need to get a pry bar, a screwdriver, pry the knuckle out from the strut, hold on to it, and get your hammer ready so you can tap your spindle in the rest of the way. You might have to use a brass punch, a big brass punch, push it in the rest of the way. Okay, like I say, you just, as you're hitting it, you pull it out a little bit. Okay. I'm ready to come off. Okay. Well, here we go. All right, it's all loose. All I need to do is tap on this spindle and get that shaft out of there. If I had 3 hands, I could do it, but okay, that's what I'm gonna do. Don't forget about the ABS wire that snaps into the strut here. Undo that. Also, that hanging me up. Then you want to get an 8 millimeter, remove the nut for the sensor, spray it down with some penetrant, get a long skinny punch, and work it, tap on it. Don't bang on it, hit it, just tap on it lightly, give a little bit of vibration, move it across, and knock this sensor out. You know, if you feel it's not going to come, then you're going to have to try getting the bearing out there with leaving it in there, but I like to rather take it out if I can. Okay, just tap on with a little hammer and it'll come out. And you might want to come over here, tap on a little bit. You'll see it move when you tap on it this way a little bit. That's when you know, okay, it moved. So then you can tap on it this way. Okay, they'll come out. It's just held in there right here with the rust at the base. See the color of the rust in there? That's where it gets stuck at. So it's really not in there too bad. So just take it out, put it aside. That way you don't damage it, okay? Next we're gonna get the bearing out of there. We gotta get the hub out of the bearing. Next you wanna do is find that Harbor Freight 1-inch socket. Kind of matches the hub. And use that to hit. Make sure your vise is really tight. Tap on the vise handle with a hammer. Make sure it's tight. Make sure this thing doesn't move down a lot. You can always stick a bar in there to hold that up at the same time. And then hit the socket to knock that hub out of there. Okay, comes right out. All right. See that race? That race has to come off also. I'll show you how to do that. So now, gonna undo it and turn it over. There should be a snap ring on the other side. Okay, get your penetrant, spray this side. Here's the snap ring inside here. Goes all the way around. And it really doesn't have no way of getting it out. So let me clean it up a little bit with a wire wheel and so I can get a better eyeball. See the snap ring? That's where you're supposed to put your pliers. It's not really a good grip to squeeze that snap ring together to get it out. So what I'll do is right about here, see the end of it? See the end of the snap ring right there? And I'll drill a hole right about here. So that way when I drill the hole, I can put a punch in there and I can push against that snap ring. and then I can get a screwdriver behind and lift it up. There's a little ledge right there. I'll put my drill bit right on it, like 1/8 of an inch. Right about there, I'll drill it. See the lip and the ledge there, the step. Here's the end of it right there. I'm gonna go on the beefy part of it right there, because the snap ring's right here and it ends right there. So I want to come right about there. Okay, so I'll drill a hole. If you got a sharp bit, it'll drill through it pretty good. And when it hits that snap ring, it'll stop drilling and you won't see no more particles, shavings come out of your bit. So now you know you're far enough. I hit the snap ring because the snap ring's super hard. The drill bit won't drill it. Okay, I drilled a hole in it. Got me a nice punch. And I hit it. And it brought it out just a little bit. See it? And I can see if I can hit it out a little bit more and put a screwdriver behind it. And then I can pry that snap ring out of there. Got your screwdrivers in there. And work it. Work it around. Twist the screwdriver as you go. And use the other one to pick it up. Okay? Try not to bend it too much. Okay? This one's in there. I used 2 screwdrivers like I showed you. I had to get a little bit bigger one to use. The little one wasn't working. So now I got this one wedged in there and I'm hitting with a hammer. I'm gonna work my way around and pull that snap ring out of the groove. Okay? Wow, that one fought me all the way. Got it out. So now what you do, stretch it out and kind of straighten it for the, if you don't get a new one with your bearing. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Now I need to press this bearing that way. Okay? Okay, we need to push against this inner bearing race. The ball bearings are still inside there and it pushes on the outer race. So I got some pieces, matches perfect, okay? If you don't have a press, then you'll have to hit this part with a hammer and support your knuckle to allow that bearing to go down. If you got something that's a little bit bigger, you can go right over that, you know, to hold up against it just so that bearing's not being pushed up against anything. So it's kind of like up in the air, okay? But you don't want to be hitting with a hammer. That'll damage your new ones when you go back together. So I have a press. I'm gonna press this out. You can get yourself a press from Harbor Freight for $100, cheap one, it'll work. So I use the socket to give me a space, okay? And I'll sit there and pump the jack down so it ain't far. Now next I need to find something that's actually, what I was telling you, support it around here. So I'm not pressing up against the face of that and not allowing the bearing to come all the way out. So I gotta go find me a spacer. Make sure your spacer is big enough that your bearing won't go through it. Otherwise you're defeating the purpose. Now this just fits over it a little bit, so I gotta have it perfectly centered on it when I press up against it, okay? Okay, here's the press. I got a different size socket. Here's my piece that's pushing down on my inner race with the ball bearing pushing against the outer race. Here's my spacer, kind of centered. So I need to press down on that with my press and press that whole bearing out of there. First initial break, it'll make a bunch of noise. Oh. Woo, man. Hear it? See the whole thing move? Whole ain't coming. Oh boy. Okay, getting easier now. Everything's gonna drop in there. Boom, done. All right, get the idea. Okay, put in your vise, clean it up, get all the rust out of there, and clean all the rust out of your snap ring groove. And then what you want to do is put a film of anti-seize in there for your bearing. Then you want to get something to push down on the whole bearing itself to push it in there. And then you have to get it past the snap ring groove. Okay? Instead of you pound on this with a hammer, you're gonna put bang marks in your bearing and it's gonna be no good. So you don't want to be hitting with a hammer. If you're gonna hit it with a hammer, you want to hit the outer ring of it. Okay? Me, I always use the outer bearing, the old bearing. Matches perfect. Okay? And then I'll get something to push up against that, push that bearing into the knuckle. And I can do that again. Do that again. Okay? Now we got figured that out. Now we're going to have to figure out how to support our knuckle on the base of the press. Me, I'm a pack rat. Keep a lot of old bearings. I got 2 old bearings. Matches in there perfect. I'll stack them on top of the vise. Not the vise, but the press. And it clears the knuckle. So nothing's going to be in the way. So put that on there upside down, turn it over. I'll press my bearing in with my old bearing and my thing and my socket to make up the gap if I need it. Okay? Okay, here's my setup. New one, old one, spacer. Couldn't use 2 of them because it was too high. So I got it centered. Okay. And my knuckle's not hitting nothing else, so it's sitting flat. Now I can press it in. Okay. Gotta make sure this is tight. Waste my time. All right. There it's going. All right. Sorry for the jerkiness. And there it is, almost in there. Okay, it's in there. Now, pressing it hopefully past where the snapper goes and bottomed out. Okay. It's good. Push that up. Okay. So that part's done. Show you next in a second. Okay. The old bearing it's stuck in there. No, it's not. Just tap on it with a hammer. Okay. Now what we need to do is put our snap ring in our groove. Next, clean out your groove for your snap ring. Make sure there's no crud in it. Put a little bit of anti-seize inside there. Clean up your snap ring with a wire wheel. And then you want to open it up a little bit and straighten it out. Okay. And then you want to expand it so that, because when you pulled it out, you kind of made it smaller. So we need to stretch it back out. Stretch it back out. Make it bigger. Get a pair of pliers and just pull on, but don't pull on this part because you'll rip it off. So I just want to pull on that part. Okay. What you want to do is get a pair of pliers, go over here, sits in there loosely, go up here towards the top, pry down on it, and expanding it equally. Okay. Do that a little bit. match it up to the knuckle. Make sure it's bigger. If it's bigger, then you're good. If it's not, then you have to pry it open a little bit more. Kind of put it back in the same spot so the opening's not where your punch is, in case you gotta change it again. Okay? And then go around and tap it in with your punch. Another critical thing I forgot to tell you, when you're pressing your bearing in, okay? See the blackness? That's your sensor. Not your sensor, but your magnet. Okay, for your ABS. See on this side? It's not there. Okay? So make sure this goes towards the sensor. It'd be actually towards the drive axle. Okay? This side towards the hub. See on this one, can't tell, but it's got the black on both sides. That's what I noticed when I opened this one up, and I kind of forgot about it, and I also assumed that they're all going to be that way, but no. See how that one's black inside there? It's not shiny. Okay. And that one should move with the bearing. Okay. So that's your sensor. Ring. Keep screwing things up. Okay. So make sure you double check that you're putting this pointing out, that in. Okay. I was lucky that this one had them both, but I did double check it. I just didn't tell you. Sorry. Next, you want to remove that race off of the hub. Get a die grinder, slide it at an angle. Okay. Slide it pretty good. Kind of even it up, look down at the, make sure you don't cut into this part too much. End up cutting it all. Just get it in there, good deep groove. Take your chisel, stick it in there, hit it with a hammer. It cracks it the rest of the way and loosens it up. Then you can tap it off the rest of the way with your hammer and chisel. And here it is. Gone now. All right. You get the idea. Came right off. Cut into it just a little bit. That's okay. All right. Okay, now we need to press the hub into the bearing. I use that to protect my wheel studs. If I just push up against it, I'm pushing against my wheel studs, and then I'll pop my wheel studs out. So what I'm doing this. Okay. All right. So this goes like that. All right. Get the idea. So when I'm pressing that on, guess what? This inner race here comes up, but I need to push that inner race onto that hub. So what I'll do is I'll stick that on there like that, and it pushes on that inner race, and allows me to allow the hub to go inside that race. And it's not going to stick all the way. It's not going to stick all the way past this race. It's just going to be below it just a little bit. So that would work perfect. Okay. Just turn this around like that. It's going to hit. Okay, because that's sticking down below. That's sticking down below. So you want to turn it over. Okay. So pushing. This is pressing down onto that. And when the press doesn't move no more, you know it's all the way on there. Okay. So, got that pushing up against the inner race. And that pushing up. Okay. We're all set. It's all lined up. Press it down. It goes on there fairly easy. It's all lined up. Ooh, getting tight. I give it a good umph. Okay, it's done. Okay. See how it's not sticking up past the bearing race? It's just down a little bit below it, okay? So that's perfect, okay? There we are. We're good to go. Okay. So now we'll put this baby back on. And we'll be all set. Okay, clean up your ball joint, tie rod, splines. Put some anti-seize on them. Clean out your knuckle where your ball joint goes. Put some anti-seize in there. Put some anti-seize in your splines on your hub. Okay? And then we'll stick that in, bring it over, and place it on top of the ball joint. Put a pry bar in your lower control arm so you can pull the control arm down. Put your knuckle into your axle and then swing it over and put it onto the ball joint while you're pushing down on the control arm. And once you get it in there, then you can line it up with the knuckle with the strut. So now you're gonna get your strut bolts, put some anti-seize on them and stick them in there, okay? Got your strut knuckle bolts tight. Oh, they're just round holes. They're not oblong holes. There's no alignment adjustment on that. So you don't have to worry about camber issues. I think those are probably done with a eccentric bolt in the future, or possibly on top with the strut. Okay, so we got those two tight. Put your axle nut on, just run it up just to get it in there. We'll torque that after we get the brake caliper on. Next we need to do is put our lower ball joint bolt in. What we'll do is stick a pry bar in the control arm, move the control arm up and down a little bit so we can push the bolt into the notch into the ball joint stud. So you're probably looking about 80 foot-pounds for those bolts in the strut knuckle and about 40 foot-pounds for the ball joint. You might want to look them up and get the correct spec, okay? I'm just giving you ballpoint figures. Okay, next what we want to do is put our sensor back in, okay? Before you put the sensor in, put some anti-seize around the sensor and then stick it in and put some anti-seize on your bolt and then connect all your little spots where they connected at, okay? Okay, when you're putting that sensor in, you might not want to go all the way in, so you want to tap around the base of it, you know, with your punch. Just tap it. Don't be banging on it. Just tap it so it hits it and bottoms out. And then you can put your bolt on and then tighten your bolt up. Don't put your bolt on it and tighten it up with the bolt to draw it in, because then you'll snap it off. So then you'll clip it into your strut. Put this one in. Make sure you twist it properly so it's got that nice curve in it that goes around the stabilizer link. Put it in there and then connect it up there inside the fender skirt, and then push it into the inner fender wall and then put a new clip in, okay? And that part's done. Next what we need to do is clean up the hubs, get the rust off of there and inside the rotor. Okay, rust is off there. He's a disc, angled disc. I cleaned inside the rotor also. Now I'll put a fine film of anti-seize on it. Time to put my brake caliper brackets on. I lubed up my slide pins with some caliper slide pin lubricant. Okay, so now I'll get them on there. Time to put the pads in. Put them in at an angle like that. Because it has little springies on them. Push it in, freeze it. Okay. Gonna need pads. Depends how much they drive, 6 months. Okay. Now we'll put the calipers on. I got the caliper bracket bolts tightened to 45 foot-pounds about. Double check your spec on that. Your caliper bracket bolts, they were the 15 millimeters. Your caliper bolts, they're the 10 millimeter head ones. No, 12 millimeter head ones, sorry. And you want to torque those to like 18 foot-pounds. Double check the spec on that. Next you want to do is line up your hose that goes in there with that bolt. Put some anti-seize on that bolt. That's a 10 millimeter head one. And snug it up. Put your tie rod nut on. Get a pry bar, go underneath under the control arm, underneath the tie rod in, and push it up to hold it into the taper. And then you can tighten your nut up. Okay? Those you get them pretty tight. Yeah, once it's seated and not spinning, you want to torque it to 50 foot-pounds. Double check the spec on that. Next, we're going to tighten the axle nut. I'm going to get the spec on that. And we'll stick a screwdriver inside here to keep the rotor from turning. And I'll take my vice grips off my lug stud. I usually do that to keep the rotor from falling off and keep it straight. Okay, screwdriver in there to hold the rotor. I torque my axle nut to 188 foot-pounds. Okay, click it a couple times to make sure it's set, and then you're good. And everything is together on this side. Clean off your rotor, and then you can put on your tire and your lug nuts and tighten your lug nuts to 90 foot-pounds. Double check your torque specs. Don't rely upon me, and that's how you do it. If I helped you in any way, subscribe to me, that'd be great. That helps me out, gives me the spirit to want to give you guys some information. It takes a little extra time to do my jobs to do this, even though I'm not the greatest. So, but good luck. See you on the next one. Just make sure you're putting the bearing in the proper direction. The black side in, shiny side out towards the hub. Okay? Thank you.